Welcome to Prime Suspects. Alongside Adam Bjorn and Prime Sports co-founder Joe Brennan Jr., I'm your host, Matt Landis, working through a bit of a cold, as you can probably tell. Pardon any subpar audio on my end. Fortunately, Joe and Adam going to do most of the talking on this week's episode. And guys, kicking it off with the latest from inside Prime Sports. With the NFL season in the books, NBA and NHL All-Star festivities have taken center stage with new formats for both leagues. NBA drawing mixed reviews, to put it kindly, but the NHL getting rave reviews for the Four Nations face-off. Adam, how much did the new formats affect Prime's handle for the NBA and NHL All-Star break events?
We didn't really notice any drop-off, but we didn't really notice much action either. On the NBA one, again, I'd heard the traders sort of talking about, maybe certain things they can't offer based on the way the format was. The traders didn't really completely understand how the structure and things were like that. So again, every time you get sort of a change and dynamic in these things, there's kind of a relearning process of what should be offered, what can't be parlayed, and all these kind of things. From that feedback, it was an interesting on the NBA side. I didn't hear much on the NHL side from the traders. It sounded like everything went very well on that side of it. But there was some question marks about the NBA and what they put together, and hoping that it's not the same one next year.
Yeah, I think plenty of people are sharing that hope as far as the NBA All-Star break is concerned. And one more question for you when it comes to the NHL. I feel like USA-Canada on Thursday night getting about as much excitement as I can recall for a mid to late February hockey game to see who's going to win the Four Nations face-off. Are you seeing any sort of uptick in action for that USA-Canada rematch relative to what you typically see for a February NHL game?
Not really. NHL across the US is really the sixth, seventh sport. It's not a big taker, but no, nothing standing out at this point in time.
All right, we'll see how that may evolve over the time between now and the puck dropping Thursday evening. And Joe, it seems like, if anything, your excitement may be worth noting here, because on Saturday on Twitter, you posted that if you're American or Canadian watching the NBA All-Star Skills Competition, instead of USA-Canada and the Four Nations game tonight, please move to the softest European country you can afford. With that in mind, what do you think the NBA can learn from the NHL's approach here?
Well, one, I think it's too early to tell, at least how this is going to affect us. There's very little awareness ahead of time, I think, for people. It was amazing to me the number of people who are actually diehard hockey fans who weren't aware that the Four Nations Cup, it was in place of the NHL All-Star game this year. What? So I think between that, the changes that were made in the format, not only to the NBA All-Star game, but then, the new events that were added to the NBA All-Star Skills Competition, right? This is going to be a lagging indicator. I would say, if you're looking for pure spectacle, fan engagement, what was the more interesting competition? Obviously, the NHL one, the Four Nations, is much more interesting because you do have the best players from all of those countries. And hockey only seems to know one speed, and that's full speed. They're not coasting. It's not like a lot of the NBA All-Star game where defense, what's defense, traditionally speaking. So it's compelling geopolitically, right now. And the unfortunate thing is that the United States and Canada, two longtime allies, are now treating each other as adversaries. That kind of sucks, but it is driving interest and will almost certainly drive interest and viewership in that game on Thursday night. How does this translate, though, for both events, filtering back into gambling product? For the NHL, I don't know that it's going to be that much different than what you're going to get with a good Stanley Cup Finals matchup. But with the NBA, I do kind of wonder, and looking at the way they chopped it up in the mini tournament and all that, if there was at least a little bit of betting consulting going on there, because it's very much in keeping with how fragmented the media has become on it. Adam's talked a lot of times about players just playing live, just betting live, or watching the highlights of the games. Why watch a whole game when you can just watch a few minutes and watch the YouTube highlights or the TikTok highlights and things like that? And you could say that the way they chopped it up between the All-Star game, that mini tournament, and then the skills competition, you could make an argument that there's a lot there that you could work with to make more betting content particularly for props and things like that on the skills competitions. I don't know that that was their intention, but that's kind of how I viewed it in looking at it. In the end, though, I do think most recreational players want to be, they want to feel passionate about what they're watching. They want to be interested in what they're watching. The NBA product couldn't touch the NHL product. So maybe the betting opportunities are really only for the kind of guys that recreational sports books don't want. We do want, but it'll be like a very small percentage of the betting population.
All right. Well, from the new format for the All-Star breaks in the NBA and NHL to a potential new format for New Jersey tax rates. Our water cooler segment this week. Just a couple weeks ago, guys, we featured Ohio's proposed tax hike in this segment. This week, it's Prime's other market. And per Shlomo Shore on Twitter, I hope I'm getting that pronunciation correct. The handle is at One Jersey Shore, Shore spelled SCHORR. To help balance the fiscal year 2026 budget, New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy is considering several new tax hikes, including on online gaming, which is taxed at a much lower rate than neighboring states. And Joe, to some, this sounds like a natural next step, but you posted that what New Jersey hasn't gotten in taxes, it has overwhelmingly gotten in job creation and investment, with operators putting the bulk of their operations and service centers in the state. So what do you think should happen with New Jersey taxes? And what do you think will happen at the end of the day?
Okay, I was resolved to start off more positive and say this could be a great opportunity for the industry to bifurcate, the notions about taxation. Okay, this could be a great opportunity for the industry to get in there and re-educate legislators and say, these are the commercials, these are the economics behind sports betting. And this is what it funnels down to as far as like a workable, rational tax rate. And then these are the economics, these are the commercials behind online casino and what a reasonable benchmark for taxation could be there. Because in the state of New Jersey, and New Jersey's one of the biggest markets, the second best performing market in the United States after New York. In 2024, there was $1.09 billion in revenue from the sports books. There was $2.89 billion in revenue from the online casinos. So this might be a really good opportunity for the industry to start being proactive and lobbying, not to create little clever ways of blocking out the rest of the competition, because that's how we wound up here with Fan Kings and the rest of them trying to make New York so expensive the rest of us couldn't get in, right? And now it's come back to bite them in the ass. But this might be a good opportunity if we all take off our selfish caps and put on our industry sustainability caps and say, all right, New Jersey, we grant you're maybe leaving a little money on the table with casino. So maybe you have a discrete tax rate just for online casino that's higher. But let's leave sports betting where it's at, because higher rates on sports betting is going to have a pretty serious knock-on effect. And what I alluded to before was New Jersey, when it first passed online gaming in 2013, and then online sports betting in 2018, okay, New Jersey got the bulk of the jobs, the bulk of the investment, right? It was the Silicon Valley of online gaming and sports betting in the United States. Whether you're down in South Jersey in like the Cherry Hill area, you're up in North Jersey, you're Jersey City, everything, it got all the jobs, right? So anything that Jersey is, they think that they're leaving on the table in gross gaming taxes, they are getting back, and more so in income taxes, sales taxes, leases, all that, investment, all that. So if they were dumb enough, and I'm just going to say it, dumb enough to raise that rate up to parity with their neighbors in Pennsylvania with 35% gross gaming tax and New York at 51%. One thing you know about both of those jurisdictions, they don't have that kind of job investment, infrastructure investment, anywhere near it that New Jersey has. But I don't think those jobs will flee to either of those jurisdictions, because think about it now. There's other jurisdictions that have online sports betting that have much lower costs of doing business and much lower tax rates. I was just looking at a list here. I was picking out a few states. New Jersey, by the way, when you look at the CNBC rankings on 2024, New Jersey ranked 42nd out of the 50 states as far as overall the cost of doing business. That means it is one of the top 8 most expensive states to do business in, between cost of rents, cost of employment, taxes, all those things. So when you start looking going the other way, cost of doing business, Ohio is number 2. Okay. Kentucky, West Virginia, Indiana, Tennessee, Louisiana, they're all in the top 10. They all have online sportsbook, right? Here's one that's just outside of the top 10 that to me winds up looking like, whoa, the perfect combination of quality of infrastructure, cost of doing business, concentration of technology, and the tax rate currently on sports betting. And where is it? It's in our man Maximus's new hometown, or new home state of Michigan. Michigan, with their reasonable tax rate and all those other things, I could see how they could make a case to suck jobs out of a place like New Jersey to them. Midwest, I mean, it's a great state to do business in. I'm not trying to close the door on New Jersey, but it's this kind of short-sighted thinking. Like, oh, we're leaving money on the table with taxes. Not at all. Not at all. You're getting that and more so. But New Jersey benefits from the fact that there is a regulatory required minimum headcount. You have to have these positions, have to be licensed, and have to physically be in New Jersey to do business there. And that's great. But most people have more than that, right? If something like this were to happen and New Jersey were brought up to parity with their very expensive neighbors, especially since so many of them are publicly traded, right? They're going to start looking for other places to put their employees, and they'll just leave a minimum viable footprint, a minimum compliant footprint in the state of New Jersey to do business there. And then they potentially will move people elsewhere, because that's just the way of the world nowadays. So I really caution New Jersey to think about this seriously and thoughtfully. The problem is there's too many people now making decisions in Trenton that weren't there for when this was all developed for the first time back 2013, 2018, including Governor Murphy. Well, I'm not trying to piss off, but he's on his way out of office because he's term limited, and he's trying to make up his budgetary gap with 1/3 of the revenue coming from raising the taxes on us. It's not going to happen, Governor Murphy. So they either get rational about this and think about different ways to split the baby on this between us and online casino, or they risk doing catastrophic damage to their state. And that's the end of my TED Talk.
All right. And as we wrap up this week's edition of Joe's TED Talk, Adam, want to kick it over to you and frame it up as hearing Joe mention the phrase short-sighted thinking, if I recall correctly. And you have looked at things through the lens of the long term as much as anybody I'm aware of in this space. So with that juxtaposition in mind, what's your reaction to the prospects of a potential tax hike in New Jersey compared to the news from a couple weeks ago of proposed tax increases in Ohio?
I'm just tired of this horse shit. Like, this is just a topic that keeps coming up and up and up. I'm going to turn this into a quick infomercial. I have 7,000 square feet of commercial downtown Memphis. So anyone wanting to move the business to Tennessee, I'll throw in some consulting for free and whatnot. I also know Michigan pretty well. So anyone looking to put a trading center in Michigan, I'm here. I'll spend my time. I'll give some free consultancy as well. This is just tiresome. This is a bunch of people that are making decisions, having no idea of the business, no idea of the cost of doing business and the way to weigh it up. And they're really getting to a point where they're just outpricing the US to even bother regulating here. Like, become a sweepstakes, become a next topic, Kelsey and all those of the under the CTFC or whatnot. Go back to the offshore, they're really just making it ridiculous to a level of why bother doing this when it's just becoming easier and easier to run businesses from anywhere in the world. And I've really been pushing this, regulate unregulated, but it seems the regulators and the legislators, again, not the regulators' fault, they get handed the dog shit that the legislators give them, but they're really just trying to put stuff together that's making this worse and worse for anyone to try and actually operate in this business. I think this was definitely a Joe question, and he laid it out perfectly of go tackle the iGame, go tackle the real issue of responsible gaming, go tackle all these other things and sort of, tax those a little bit harder. So the operators hopefully give a little bit back and be a little bit fair on that side of it. They're taxing the lowest margin gambling aspect of the whole gaming industry. So what I said at the beginning, I'm just tired of this topic. I'm tired of this horse shit and people that truly don't understand how this business is operated and why so many of them went offshore, went into other jurisdictions and do it in a certain way. Until they understand that and understand the struggles of being on the operator's side and what it costs to run the business, I guess we're going to keep hearing this same bullshit.
And to just pick up slightly on something that Adam just mentioned, and that is mentioning alternative formats that you see cropping up, sweepstakes, prediction marketplaces regulated through the CFTC. This is where you could make a case that the states aren't reading the room very well right now. They're not reading the environment really well because you're starting to see other avenues to market, other avenues to providing sports to people in the United States through whatever legal means, right? And when you see something like this is the states doubling down on we're the guys in charge, okay? It's a little tone deaf. It's saying, and everybody knows I've been doing this at the state level for close to 20 years now. So I have 100% respect for state level politics and process. But there are times when it's like, look, this is one of the few things where the states get all the money. They've not had to share the pie with the federal government when it comes to taxes. So gaming tax revenue is very important to state budgets, but there becomes a point of diminishing returns. If they want to turn this into a duopoly where there's really only two viable companies, and then they're lottery companies, okay, they will make, if they think like, who cares how many companies there are, as long as we get the money. If there's only two companies, you're going to see a lot of money rush out of this industry, okay? You're going to see a lot of jobs rush out of it. It's going to have a negative effect if they squeeze it like that. The other thing is you're going to see that slippage around the margins to, let's just go the prediction market route, or let's go the sweepstakes route. This is a bad time for the states to be doubling down and trying to show everybody who's boss instead of starting to think about innovating in their legal and regulatory structures on how to continue to maintain their primacy in this marketplace in gaming and continue to keep it regulated at the state level instead of squeezing the shit out of it and making it virtually impossible. And the one thing I don't understand is with states doing this, they're perpetually just going to be open for business for carpetbaggers. Every time somebody says like, oh, well, our state's going to make it 35, 51%. And like, do you have zero interest in Illinois or New York or Pennsylvania or someplace like that in people starting businesses from that state to operate in this business? Do you only want the business to be done by people from New York, Boston, and Europe and Nevada? So, I mean, this is so poorly thought out, but again, the industry brought it on itself with New York. And so I think everybody really ought to take this time this might be the retrenchment that the industry needs to step back and say, okay, this is what 2.0 from legislation and regulation is going to look like before we run face first into the wall.
Well, Joe, I heard you mentioned alternative formats. Adam, I heard you mention Kalshi specifically. So we will use that as a springboard, pivoting from potential tax increases in Prime's current markets to a potential future for FanDuel and DraftKings in prediction markets. And our look ahead segment this week, guys, we'll kick off by noting that industry consultant Dustin Gauker on Substack noted growing speculation that FanDuel and DraftKings will get into sports prediction markets by partnering with companies such as Kalshi. DraftKings CEO Jason Robbins has been quoted as saying his company isn't spending any lobbying money on the topic, and he doesn't have a problem with the competition, instead positioning it as more of a positive in the fact that it grows the total addressable market. Now, Gauker's take here was that if the lid is off sports event trading, which seems increasingly likely, it feels inevitable that sportsbooks will get involved, especially for states they can't serve now, thinking California, Texas, and Florida. So with that in mind, a jump ball to you guys. What does the future look like for sports books and sports prediction markets, especially in a state like California, considering that on one hand, it could be playing with fire given the tribe's stance to date, and on the other hand, legalization is seemingly nowhere on the horizon, and there's no guarantee how the regulated landscape would even work out for those current market leaders in the first place.
100%. DraftKings, I mean, I don't know how we phrase this. Like, are they, should they? 100%. They should be going straight in there, whether it's through financing another company or a different, subsidiary or something like that. They should be going right after it. I don't know if they know how to, potentially, with the tech stack and everything that they have, but they have all the stuff there. They have all the stuff in-house. It's not that hard to go and plug it in or turn it on to some of these other tech stacks. So 100% they should be going after a California. Build a database, because that's all the sweepstakes companies are doing. They're building databases to one day sell to DraftKings or FanDuel and make their dime that way, while still making some along the way. Go after it. Like everybody else is. They're, not doing anything outside of the legislations. It's not the difference, I think, here with what's happening versus sweepstakes. Sweepstakes is a little stinky and a little gray in their own backyard. This other stuff, 100% straight up. So go out there, build these things. It's just another vertical. It's, it's eyeballs to capture in to then trade into their other products. Nobody in their right mind is putting in sports betting to think that that's their number one silo. They're doing it because it's an add-on to all the other stuff that they have there. And this is just to, again, offer different markets, pick up arbitrages, pick up the square person that's trading everyday stocks or gold or silver or all this other shit. And then, okay, who's going to win the NBA championship? Let me play in there as well. It's another silo. It's another thing in the ecosystem. 100% they're going to do it. 100% they're going to lean into it. I think they just maybe need some guidance on how to do it. Here I am. So here we go. It's
another infomercial.
It's there. It's there for the taking. They should be stepping right into this and playing with the rest of them.
All right. Well, Joe, we got 2 infomercials from Adam this week. Are we going to get a second TED Talk from you this week as well?
Hey, I'm for sale too, buddy. I'm not the only one. He's not the only one who could pimp himself out. Now, what I'd first say is, like, back when we talked about Robinhood, I said, I don't think they're going to get into it. I just didn't think so. So score one for Maximus. And then also one of my favorite guys in the industry, Chris Grove, because I think we were responding to his statement. I think I'm just taken aback by, and I'm just going to say it, the utter lawlessness that these guys have. And just, they are move fast, break things, ask for forgiveness if anybody ever gets after them. So I'm honestly, this has happened at a pace that kind of took me by surprise. I think it is going to take folks in California, Texas, Florida, where even though the Seminoles have the exclusive on sports betting with the compact, it's when you're talking about something that's federal versus something that's state, well, with everybody's an expert in government in America nowadays, especially, separation of powers and things like that. Everybody's a constitutional law professor now on Facebook. Everybody should know the supremacy clause. And so if it's permitted by the Fed, the states just got to sit there and they got to accept it, right? So this does create a kind of interesting dynamic in those states and for the tribes. And how do we do this? Now, let's just say, eventually, to Adam's point, this has to be part of like an integrated product offering. So anybody who just says, well, we're going to, like if DraftKings said, we're going to open up a DCM through the CFTC and we're going to charge into California tomorrow, they know that they would be really ticking off the California tribes. And Victor Roca, who leads the tribes, has a longer memory than I think just about anybody in this business. And he is willing to use their influence. He is a able and substantial combatant to have to deal with. So it's not just as simple as like getting permission from CFTC or not getting permission and just doing it until somebody stops you and really being able to operate there. The other thing is the current product that the DCMs, the prediction marketplaces offer, great. And an exchange product with very simple markets, like straight up like futures, who's going to win kind of. You're not going to get the kind of, because it is an exchange, with the liquidity problems and all of that you see at the state level, it's still a problem at the federal level. This is a model, which again, I will say, caveat, huge fan of Betfair when they launched, but even Betfair and Matchbook and places like that are in decline. Too often, there's no liquidity or not enough liquidity in the marketplace in order to be able to match the orders on the other side. The product offering at a federal level won't look anywhere near as broad as it is with the regulated sports books at the state level, unless somebody is able to find innovative solutions that may be able to work within those confines to approximate that a little better. But that's a discussion for another time. I don't think Adam and I want to do that discussion in front of the kids today. But there certainly are ways. They are not present in the current product, and I don't think they will be anytime soon. But I will say this. If FanDuel and DraftKings aren't out there combing through the lists of DCMs and trying to find the cheapest ones or the ones that are in the most financial distress right now to just snap them up and get into this business, I would be stunned.
All right, a topic worth following perhaps in future episodes, but we'll go ahead and tie a bow around this one. We've got a couple infomercials from Adam, a couple of TED Talks from Joe, and hopefully a couple of insights in which you, the audience, have found value along the way. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you next week. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Prime Suspects. Register for Prime Sports at primesports.com and download the Prime Sports app. You can follow us on Twitter at Prime Sportsbook, at Joe Brennan Jr., and at Adam Bjorn 2. You must be 21 or over to play on Prime Sports. Always bet responsibly and within your limits. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER.